Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. My name is Shaib Jama, aka Jet, and I am the Community Health and Wellness Coordinator at ETSS. Welcome to today's training on addressing emergency response, disaster preparedness, and culturally tailored behavioral health response services for the Ethiopian Eritrean community. This is the 2024 study that we did. Here's the study of the study, and if you scan the QR code, you will be able to access the full report of the study as well. I just wanted to quickly go over some group agreements. We have 3 of them today. Just make sure to keep these in mind while we go through the presentation. I also wanted to give a few acknowledgements. So first, I wanted to acknowledge Ohio Moss. They are the funders of the previous study and also these presentations that we're putting together based off of the study. So thank you, Liz and Dr. Adhikari. I also want to thank Suzanne Schaefer and Amy Harper, which did amazing leadership. And then I also wanted to thank the entire ETSS Community Health and Wellness team for their ongoing contribution and for everything that they did in the previous project. I also wanted to acknowledge Israel. I will be talking about Israel later on today because she did a lot of work when it came to the Ethiopian Eritrean community. I also wanted to acknowledge the community-based organization for the Ethiopian Eritrean community. We work with Betty Yard. And that's his contact right there if you want to reach him for any questions or anything, just to ask any questions about the Ethiopian Eritrean community. Speaking of questions, today we actually are starting with our Ethiopian Eritrean community presentation. I will be showing the questions that they are going to be going over shortly, and then followed by just some introductions and then the quantitative results, followed by the qualitative results, and then the social media and information. And then we'll wrap up with just some resources and the conclusion. So here are the questions that the community will be going over today. And I will go ahead and pass it on to Father Yared and Betty Yared and other members from the Ethiopian Eritrean community.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hermela Salomon, and I'm one of the speakers today representing the Ethiopian and Eritrean community. I just want to say thank you to start off to the Ethiopian Tawhid Social Services and Beit Yared for allowing us community members to speak on this topic. Today I'll be joined by Father Dr. Yared Udajo from Beit Yared. He is the COO, as well as speakers Christian Tasok, Edlos Yared, and Rohaman Demmeka. They'll all be helping me today to introduce the Ethiopian and Eritrean community and some of the challenges and struggles related to emergency preparedness. Right now, I'm going to pass it off to Father Yared Udajo. They are the COO of Beit Yared, and they're going to say some words about the mission statement of the organization.
Good afternoon, everybody. Beit Yared and ETSS are collaborating to support the Ethiopian and Eritrean communities by combining spiritual care with practical mental health and wellness service. ETSS brings over 20 years of experience serving immigrant families, while Beit Yared offers faith-based counseling and spiritual support together. They aim to promote mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being in culturally rooted and compassionate way. As a founder of Beit Yared, I'm honored to work with ETSS to help highlight the root cause of mental health and challenges in our community to the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Service. Thank you, Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, for funding this important research, and thank you, emergency responders and behavioral health professionals, for coming today.
This presentation will be on the Ethiopian and Eritrean immigrant and refugee communities. These countries have a long history together, and their communities share both language and similar cultures, which is why we're talking about them together today. Our first question is, could you share what was happening in the country that made people feel unsafe? So a bit of background on the country. There were a couple active conflicts in the latter half of the 20th century, including the Ethiopian Civil War, the Eritrean War for Independence, and some like ethnic-based conflicts, particularly between the Tigray, Amhara, and Oromia ethnic groups. There was also political instability as a result of a coup happening in 1974, and the new government cracked down on civilians, causing some human rights concerns, including arrests without due process for political enemies, as well as censorship on the general public. Outside of political unrest, there was also economic hardship and high unemployment, food insecurity due to drought, and just a general lack of opportunities for the youth. This caused a lot of the young people in Ethiopia to try and look abroad for opportunities regarding employment. I'm going to pass it to Edros.
Before I begin, I would first like to thank Carmela for introducing me. And so with that, let's get into the next question. How long has our community been in Ohio specifically? Well, due to the push factors that we discussed earlier, many Ethiopians began to migrate en masse to America, especially in the late 1970s and early 1980s, during which, until now, our community has been present within Ohio. Especially in cities such as Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, does our community have a strong presence. And to preserve our culture and keep our culture alive, we've established churches, businesses, and other cultural organizations. In addition to this, another way we keep our culture alive is through cultural celebrations and also support services. But what exactly is the culture in particular that we try to keep alive? What are people to know about the Ethiopian community? When we look at our culture, we see first off that religion is absolutely central, right? The three main religions, especially in the Ethiopian Eritrean community, are Orthodox Christianity, Islam, and Protestantism. And what's important to note and what's important to understand in regards to how religion is a huge impact on our culture is that all three religions teach family values. And we see this, for example, in traditional coffee ceremonies in the Ethiopian Eritrean community. Coffee was first discovered in Ethiopia, and it's not like, in America today where you just go to your local coffee shop to get a latte and then go to work. Instead, if you want to drink coffee in Ethiopia, in the Ethiopian Eritrean community, you would go with other people. You would meet with other people, you would drink coffee and discuss, matters of the day, what you're going through, etc. So we even see, for example, within the way we drink coffee, that's communal, right? There's a sense of fellowship and community within that example there. Another thing we see, for example, is the deeply valued pressure for respecting elders. We see that morally speaking, disrespecting elders is extremely frowned upon, but especially due to the heavily taught family values within, the religion of the Ethiopian Eritrean community, respect for elders is deeply valued and taken way more seriously as well. Another factor is shared meals as well. We see that in Ethiopian cuisine, there's no such thing as, forks or spoons or other utensils. Instead, you eat with your hands and you eat in a big platter with other people. And that's another thing as well. We can even see this also with, the Ethiopian calendar, the way we track time, and also with the way we speak. That's also unique as well. Particularly, the Ethiopian calendar is 13 months as opposed to the standard 12 months in the Gregorian calendar, and is 7 to 8 years behind. In addition to this, the Giz alphabet is still used today in the Ethiopian Eritrean community. And as a matter of fact, Giz itself as a language is used in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to conduct liturgy, similar to how the Catholic Church uses Latin for Mass and how the Coptic Church uses Coptic for liturgy. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church uses Giz. In addition, there are many languages spoken in the Ethiopian Eritrean community, such as Amharic, Oromo, Tigrinya, etc. And another way we keep our culture alive is through major holidays such as Inkat, Maskan, Ganna, and Kutatash. And so with these holidays, we keep our culture alive and continue to practice our culture and our customs despite living in diaspora. And so with that, we're going to pass the mic on to my fellow spokesperson, Nicole.
Thank you, Carlos, for introducing me. I will be speaking on a couple of questions. So how has our community given back to Ohio communities? Our community has given back through volunteering, shelters, food drives, cleanups, and many more other organizations where they can contribute and see a need of help. Through youth mentoring and tutoring through community orgs like Beta Yared and other religious and non-religious organizations. And also through healthcare workers services across Ohio, many healthcare professionals from the Ethiopian and Eritrean community have contributed in that field. Civic engagement and participation is also another way our community has given back to Ohio communities. Culture sharing and through festivals, food, music, and other cultural events also is a way that we contributed to this community. Have we experienced a disaster emergency while living in United States? Some of the disasters that we have experienced, yes, we have, and some of them are severe storms, medical emergencies, power outages, and also the pandemic we all know, COVID-19. I will pass the mic to my fellow speaker, Christian.
I'd like to thank Muhammad for introducing me, and I'd also like to answer the final questions. One of them is, if so, what are some challenges experienced in accepting help? Some stated have been language barriers, not knowing who to call, and fear lack of understanding of systems. Both Ethiopia and Eritrea are home to over 80 plus languages. Its country is home to both 80 plus languages, and there are not enough language accessible materials. Another question asked, what has been successful? Many have stated interacting with kind emergency responders, technology tools, and community support. Another question is, how can behavioral health providers and emergency responders personnel be a serve to the community? Many have stated some improvements that can be made, which include information dissemination through respected leaders, organizing events with leaders from the churches and at the churches, trying outreaching to the community during community events or holidays, and also providing culturally appropriate materials in multiple languages. If you have any further questions, you can reach out to prepare2@mha.ohio.gov. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Father Dr. Yared and the other community members. Do we have any questions before we move forward? We'll take about 3 minutes for any questions. So if you have any questions that you want to ask to the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll go ahead and ask them, and then we can see if we can get them answered today. And if we don't have any questions, we can move ahead, but let's just check the chat. Are there any questions in the chat? Okay. So we can go ahead. So now I'll just go ahead and just cover some emergency gaps for the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community. They did a good job at covering these already, so I won't go ahead and go into any deeper details, but I did want to say just a few things and highlight a few things that related to the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community. So just pull that slide up. Okay, so we need more voices. So you can see the board right there. So we just need more voices from the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community when it comes to local disaster planning. We need to get them involved. We need to find where the community is at so we can go ahead and approach them and figure out, hey, how can we get you more involved? If it's incentivizing it, finding a way to incentivize their involvement. But that's just what I wanted to highlight for this portion. And then I wanted to go over briefly the importance of the current webinar series. I've went into these in deeper details in the other training sessions, but we just want to make sure that culturally and linguistically appropriate services are increased for all of these communities, and that's why we're holding these training sessions. And please save the date for the last one. It's August 8th. We've had, we have 6 planned, but so far we've only done 4, and today we're on our 5th one. Please save the date for the Congolese community. It is August 8th, same time, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And now I will go ahead and pass it on to Dr. Saruna to cover the quantitative portion of the study.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Saruna Ghimire, and I am Associate Professor at Miami University in Ohio. I was also the team member of the 2024 study that Jet introduced at the beginning of this webinar. And it's my honor to be here today and to share with you the findings from quantitative study. So before we jump into what we found, let me give you a very brief overview of what we did. We conducted a survey with 266 adults from Central Ohio. Participants came from 5 communities that included Afghan, Bhutanese, Congolese, Ethiopian Eritrean, and Somali. Today, we are focusing on the Ethiopian Eritrean community, and we had 52 participants from the Ethiopian Eritrean community. Participants were recruited with the help of ETSS in collaboration with faith-based institution. Father Yared, who you heard from at the beginning of this webinar, was very helpful. He helped us a lot to reach out to our participant and recruit them. So we are really appreciative of this collaboration with Father Yared and his organization. Our survey was available in both Qualtrics and also on paper. To ensure it was accessible to our participant, we made it available in Amharic, which is one of the most commonly spoken languages within the Ethiopian Eritrean community. Although we did hear that within this community, there are multiple languages that people speak. Just to want to clarify that these other languages that you see on my screen, like Nepali or Dari, they are for other communities that we included in our survey. Now let's look at who took part in the survey. So over the next few slides, I will be going through participants' demographic, including age, gender, English language skill, education, and disability status. One point I just wanted to clarify that most of these results that you will see are broken down in 2 ways, which is also consistent with the past webinar we have done so far in this series. But if this is your first time being with us, I just wanted to clarify that on my left, you will see the overall finding for all 5 communities included together. On my right, you will see the result just for the Ethiopian Eritrean community. This will help us to understand both the unique experiences of Ethiopian Eritrean communities, but also compare with the overall pattern across all 5 groups together. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, the age distribution was concentrated in the middle age range. The largest group was 36 to 45 years, which included about 40% of our participants. Nearly 2/3 of the Ethiopian Eritrean participants were women, and this strong representation of women is especially valuable because we know women play significant role in emergency preparedness, taking care of families, and ensuring safety of family members. This slide helps us to understand how long our participants have lived in Ohio and how comfortable they are with English language. As we can see here, Ethiopian Eritrean participants are among the most established group included in our study. Over 69% had lived in the state of Ohio for more than 5 years, with only 4% living here for less than 1 year. When it comes to English proficiency, Ethiopian Eritrean participant reported exceptionally high level compared to the overall sample. Impressively, 100% of Ethiopian Eritrean participants reported being able to read, write, and speak in English. This is significantly higher than the overall sample, where we saw that about 13% reported no English proficiency. So language proficiency was really impressive with our Ethiopian Eritrean participant. In this slide, we see the level of formal education among the participant. And in the overall group, we do see that education level was fairly spread out between the categories. But when we look at the Ethiopian Eritrean community, we see a different pattern. Most people, which is about 56% to be precise, have completed high school or equivalent education. About a quarter have no formal education or they have completed less than high school, while only 20% have completed college. When we compare this with the overall group, Ethiopian Eritrean participants were less likely to have completed college education. Next, we asked about disability status because it is one of the important factor to be examined because household with members with disabilities encounter additional challenges during emergencies and disasters. We asked participants about individual disability as well as whether they were caring for somebody with a disability. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, none of the participants reported having disability themselves. This is strikingly different than the overall group where about 1 in 10 reported having a disability. This could also be related to the fact that Ethiopian Eritrean sample were relatively younger than our overall sample. Additionally, about 8% said that they have a household member with disability, which is also lower when we compare this with the overall sample, where about 15% reported caring for someone with disability. Now we move to Ethiopian Eritrean communities' experiences with disaster, their level of preparedness, and whether they have an emergency management plan in place. We asked participants if they had ever experienced a disaster while living in the US. Across all 5 communities combined, about 20% said yes, they have experienced a disaster in the US. However, when we look at just the Ethiopian Eritrean participant, that number was much lower, where only about 2% reported having experienced a disaster in the US. Among those who had experienced a disaster, the only type that was reported was a home fire. And this finding is slightly different than what was presented by the community and also in our overall sample where we did see participants from other communities had experienced a wide array of disaster. And our colleague from Ethiopian community also explained some other disaster such as COVID-19 being experienced, but in our survey, the participant only reported experiencing home fire. Next, we asked participants what they know about disaster preparedness and different ways to prepare for that. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, we found higher level of familiarity with emergency preparedness compared to the overall sample. About 31% reported being very familiar with emergency preparedness compared to 21% overall. Additionally, only 6% were not familiar at all compared to 23% in overall sample. So the bottom line is our participants from Ethiopian Eritrean community had higher knowledge or awareness about disaster preparedness. When we asked about a specific preparedness topic that they were aware of, the most well-known knowledge included making home safer, saving money for emergencies, making emergency plan, and gathering or updating emergency supplies. We also asked participants two important questions. The first was, how likely do you think a disaster is likely to affect your area? And the second was, if it did happen, how confident are you in your ability to respond? Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, the majority believed a disaster was either unlikely or they said did not have an idea if it was likely to happen. Only about 29% believed a disaster was likely to occur in their area. When it comes to confidence in responding to a disaster, only 1 in 5 felt extremely confident in their ability to respond, if which was also similar to the overall sample. The majority felt only somehow confident or not confident at all. This is a major concern here because despite being aware of emergency preparedness knowledge, over half of the Ethiopian Eritrean participant felt unprepared to deal with a disaster if one was to happen. This points to an important area for action for service providers in terms of making emergency preparedness program focusing on building practical skills such as training drills or any sort of hands-on training to help participants feel more confident and ready to take action in the time of real emergencies. We also asked participants whether they currently have a disaster or emergency response plan in place. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, only 35% said they had a plan, with the remaining 65% did not have a plan. The planning was lower compared to the overall sample, where about 40% reported having a plan. For those Ethiopian Eritrean households that had taken steps to prepare, the most common action plan included insurance of property, making homes safer, making financial emergency plan, protecting important documents, learning evacuation routes, and so on. These are all strong first steps that shows a growing awareness and willingness among our participants to engage and be prepared for emergency management. However, it is also important to recognize that with about 65% of Ethiopian Eritrean household still not having a plan, highlights that there is a need to continue supporting these families by providing accessible, culturally relevant, and easy to use tool for emergency preparedness. Now let's look at some of the barriers and challenges participants faced when trying to access emergency preparedness resources. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, a significant 63% said that they had never accessed any emergency preparedness services at all. 33% said they had not faced any difficulty accessing these services, and only 4% reported having difficulty with existing resources. So while most did not report direct barriers, I wanted to point out to the fact that nearly two-thirds of the participants had no exposure to these resources, which points to a larger issue of awareness and outreach. That means these existing resources are not even accessible to these participants, or maybe they just do not know that these even exist there. So there is a need to better promote these training and resources with these communities so that they are accessible to participant. Next, we also ask participants whether they know how to get help during an emergency if one was to happen. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, 42% said they know how to get help. While the remaining, which is more than half of the participants, said they did not know how to get the help. In the overall sample, more than half of the participants actually knew how to access help during emergencies. However, this percentage was lower among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, and this gap suggests that Ethiopian Eritrean community members may face greater barrier to accessing formal emergency services or existing services. And again, there is a need to better outreach and increase marketing of existing resources and increase awareness of these resources with Ethiopian Eritrean community members. Next, we asked participants about the specific reason they may have had any difficulty accessing emergency preparedness services. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, nearly one-third reported language as a barrier. Um, other commonly reported barriers included race, gender, followed by cultural norms. It is worth noting that despite reporting high English proficiency, which was 100% across all skills of listening, speaking, um, and reading English, about one-third of participants still experienced language barriers. This shows that language challenges are not just about knowing or understanding English. It points to the fact that understanding technical information related to emergency services and maybe navigating a complex system, and again, gives us an opportunity to think about simplifying information in a way that is accessible to the community members. Next, we asked participants whether they felt the existing emergency preparedness materials were culturally appropriate. For the Ethiopian Eritrean community, 50% of them found somewhat appropriate. A quarter reported they were very appropriate. Still, 1 in 5 found that they were not appropriate. Compared to other communities or overall, Ethiopian Eritrean participants were less likely to feel that the materials were completely off base. Next, we asked participants whether they had participated in any emergency preparedness training in the recent years. For most Ethiopian Eritrean participants, the answer was no. Only about 1 in 5 had participated in such training, and interestingly, that this participation rate was higher among Ethiopian Eritrean group when we compare with the overall sample. The lack of participation was not because of lack of interest. The most common reason were that the participants were unaware such training opportunity existed. To improve training access, and again, so this points out to lack of awareness about what exists around them. So to improve access to this training and participation in this training, we need to do better job of marketing these available resources and training opportunities with the community members. One approach that we could adopt is promoting these training through trusted community channel and faith-based institution such as Bete Yared. Next, we looked at how often community discusses about emergency preparedness and what approaches work best to discuss these topics. Among Ethiopian Eritrean participants, only 17% said that their community ever talks about preparedness. This suggests that emergency preparedness is not a regular part of community conversation, highlighting an important opportunity to increase community engagement and to make it a regular topic of conversation in the community. In terms of effective ways to share information, participants said that partnership with trusted community organization, gathering at religious or worship places, social media, and community meetings are great strategies. So again, these tell us to work with the existing faith-based and community-based structure. Use the gathering or the places that people already attend. That's how we can start to shift awareness from planning to action in a way that feels more comfortable and also familiar. Finally, we asked participants how emergency preparedness could be improved, and their suggestions were both practical and thoughtful. The most preferred ways to receive information were text messages and phone calls, followed by emails. Participants also found handouts or flyer, digital resources, websites, lesson plan, activity books to be helpful. To improve preparedness overall, they emphasized a few key strategies: creating materials by the community for the community in local languages, offering training in multiple languages, understanding that even within a community, people speak multiple languages, hiring multilingual staff who are from the community and trusted by the community. These ideas make one thing very clear to us. Preparedness efforts are most effective when they are rooted in trust, built with cultural respect, and delivered in the languages people live in. Even with high English proficiency, the community valued materials and training in their native languages, emphasizing the importance of culturally and linguistically appropriate uh, approaches. With this, I wrap up the quantitative part of the survey and hand it over to Jed to continue us forward. Back to you, Jed. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Dr. Saruna. That was very informative. I will now be passing it on to Isha to go over the qualitative portion of this the research.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Isha Karmacharya, and welcome back from a relaxing break. I hope you have stretched a lot, and thank you for joining us in today's webinar. So I'm a doctoral graduate from Miami University of Ohio. So now we'll be shifting gear to what we learned from youth through a focus group discussion. So you might hear similar findings from the quantitative part and what our community stakeholders also emphasize. However, this discussion was extremely helpful to know the perspective of our youth. So we spoke with 10 youth between the ages of 18 and 25, with representation from all 5 refugee communities in our study, but I'll be focusing especially on the voices of Ethiopian youths. These youth were recruited through the ETSS Youth Advisory Panel and were all fluent in English. And the session was lasted about an hour and was guided by trained facilitators. We focused on 4 main areas, which were public health concerns, awareness of resources, challenges in preparedness, and youth recommending for community action. So there were several important themes that emerged from the focus group discussion, which are similar to the study areas that I mentioned earlier. So now I'll be discussing each themes and findings in further slides. The first theme was about the public health emergencies that our youth identified. So there were several critical public health challenges within their communities, which were substance abuse, suicide, gun violence, and social isolation. One participant mentioned that I feel like for that it's pretty generalized, especially with gun violence and drug abuse. It's kind of meshed within a wide majority of communities. So they were especially emphasizing the gun violence and drug abuse. So youth also shared that these issues are often unspoken or normalized, and they are not treated as urgent concerns, which is delaying prevention and healing. Youth shared us their first go-to resources during emergencies, which were phones, Google, a search engine and social media platforms. They also put a lot of emphasis on faith-based institution as the trusted community hubs, and they serve as informal gathering places and coordination point during crisis. Additionally, Ethiopian participants specifically shared about social union, like one said, I know the Ethiopian community, it's not like the younger generation, but the adults, they have, it's called Mahabar. It's like a social, like a union kind of, when anything happens to one of the members in the society, they have a way to help. Youth also acknowledged that some emergencies resources exist, but pointed out these services are often poorly publicized. There is no marketing for them, and it's hard to access, particularly for elders or non-English speakers. They also mentioned that emergency preparedness is hardly promoted by community leaders. For example, participants said, I never really heard anything necessarily from like even the leaders of our community. I know we get together with certain things, but for emergency preparedness, nothing. So this shows a disconnection between service availability, lack in marketing, and the accessibility of emergency preparedness and the services. Like it was discussed in quantitative study, youth from focus group discussion also highlighted language barriers as one of the biggest obstacles to emergency preparedness. Giving an example of COVID-19 pandemic, they said many community members, especially older adults, could not understand health messaging. Community members had really difficult time grasping the information, and even now don't know how to call 911 or follow safety alerts. So therefore, participants emphasize the urgent need for translated emergency materials and multilingual response system to help bridge this divide. Next barrier, they reflected on how social media and outside influences have changed their communities. They expressed worries that community is growing more individualistic and fragmented, particularly among young people who are exposed to harmful contents online. For example, one participant said, I feel like a lot of it has to do with social media. People see everything online and try to be like that, losing their true selves. I've seen friends change, becoming more violent, influenced by what they see, even though they weren't like that when they were younger. Another youth also mentioned about the shift from collective community support to individualism, saying, we went from a community that always helped each other to grow and persevere to becoming a lot more selfish. So therefore, while external resources like social media were reported as a source of awareness, they were also seen as contributors to this connection and risk, leading people in their communities to adopt values that conflict with community norms. Another important theme and barriers was the normalization of trauma, especially from violence and displacement as barriers of emergency preparedness. Youth shared that their community often respond to crisis with silence or temporary measures rather than focusing on long-term prevention or meaningful healing. Like youth explained, there's a lack of deeper conversation about the crisis and emergencies, saying, I feel like a lot of people, after someone died, I don't think there is enough talk about like, oh, that person died. I wonder what could it have caused it. They start their own rumors and stuffs about like, oh, what their theories are about how they happen, but they don't question why it might have happened and stuffs like that. So youth reflected that people are not questioning why emergencies and crises might have happened. So this mindset prevents communities from seeking help or even planning ahead to reduce future risks. Youth emphasize stigma surrounding mental health. So they explain that mental health is often seen as taboo subject, especially among older adults. There is a strong fear of judgment. Like one participant mentioned, mental health is not seen as a good thing. It's really stigmatized. So if you have a problem, you are literally just bottling it up until you explode one day. So this shows how stigma can keep people from accessing the very care that could help them. Now, talking about youth visions and recommendations to emergency preparedness planning, they expressed a strong desire to be seen as active contributors, not just recipient of support. They even mentioned themselves as gatekeepers, like explaining they can be medium to reach older adults in their homes and community. They recommended involving young people in emergency planning and leadership roles, especially through school or community-based organizations, groups, clubs, and participants also suggested that youth should be seen as community assets and part of the solution. So they emphasize starting with informal relationship building events such as cultural celebrations, games, or shared meals as a way to build trust, and then gradually introducing service opportunities to promote emergency preparedness. They emphasized about experiencing like comfort, connection, and trust within their community prior to getting involved in emergency preparedness planning and leadership roles. Youth also emphasize the importance of clear and culturally relevant communication. They suggested using trusted messengers to deliver emergency information, such as community elders and spiritual leaders, or creating promotional videos with familiar faces, someone from their community whom they know or can relate to. They also shared and suggested like emergency preparedness information could be shared through YouTube, Telegram, or social media like WhatsApp, community centers, and also religious sites. Participants also suggested adding multilingual translators to 911 services to help bridge urgent language gaps. Finally, youth stress the need to build on existing cultural and faith-based networks. Religious sites already serving as trusted spaces. They should be recognized as key partners during crisis and emergencies. Participants also mentioned that the biggest type of interventions we usually have stem from religion. So rather than replacing these traditional systems, youth participants recommended that public health and emergency organizations should work with them. However, youth also mentioned that not everybody is religious and not everybody has access to technology. So they say, I think it's up to us to use our resources to help those that don't have that accessibility. So overall, youth are expressing social support and culturally grounded engagement is essential for emergency preparedness. And overall, they are also sharing they want to be the gatekeepers. They see themselves as the community assets to be involved in leadership roles. So this is all from the focus group discussion and all from my end. So I want to pass it to Jet to continue the presentation further. Thank you.
So much for that presentation, Isha. That was very informative. Now I'll go ahead and take it away, and I will be covering social media, information dissemination, some emergency kits that we built for this grant, and just community contacts. We wanted to build a collaborative platform, so I'm going to share some contacts that we have for that. So let's first go with information dissemination. Getting critical information on time can make all the difference, especially during emergencies and crises. Our community health and wellness team led extensive information dissemination efforts to ensure communities had access to life-saving knowledge. These efforts were carefully documented in Apricot under the weekly tally form. For all of the other presentations, usually there's a slide that with a chart that says like Apricot weekly tally form. But for the Ethiopian Eritrean community, we do not track information dissemination. Israel, who is the representative from the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community, was only hired partially to support with the youth focus group and to also make social media content for her community. So we didn't hire her on to do information dissemination. But in total, between May and August 2024, our team made 237 direct contacts and distributed over 30,000 educational material. This can be found on the appendix of the report. So, and also if you attended the first training, you saw this figure that had those numbers. So now I'll just be going over the social media. As I already mentioned, our community health and wellness team did extensive social media creation and also outreach. So when it came to social media creation, our team connected with their community members, saw emergencies that were happening maybe in real time or that they've helped their community address in the past, and they created social media posts around them. So the four that you see are social media posts that Israel created for the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community. And this is just some things that she thought her community would find helpful to be educated on. So next slide, please. And I would love if we could play the video and just make sure we're sharing the sound. But if we can play the pandemics video.
Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at how to get ready for a pandemic. A pandemic occurs when a disease spreads across multiple countries and affects many people. Viruses can spread easily among people, typically causing a pandemic. New viruses can emerge unexpectedly and spread rapidly worldwide. It is challenging to predict when or where the next pandemic will originate. Pandemics spread through various routes: person-to-person transmission, contact with contaminated surfaces from infected individuals without symptoms, and understanding these routes will help prevention. If a pandemic is declared, it is important to take preventive measures such as washing your hands frequently with soap and water, maintaining a 6-foot distance from others, wearing a mask in public, cleaning and disinfecting surfaces regularly. Preparing for a pandemic involves several key steps: educating yourself on how the disease spreads to better protect your family and your community, and anticipating a potential closures of school, workplaces, and community centers, and also gathering essential supplies such as non-perishable foods, medication, and cleaning products. If you believe you've been exposed to a disease during a pandemic, take immediate action. Contact your healthcare provider for guidance and follow their quarantine instructions. Monitor your symptoms closely, and if you're experiencing a medical emergency, call 911. If possible, please wear a mask and isolate yourself until help arrives to prevent further spread of the disease. And finally, know that your safety is in your hands. Stay safe. Staying safe during thunderstorms. Thunderstorms can strike quickly and unexpectedly, but staying safe is simple if you know what to do. Here are a few tips on how to stay safe during thunderstorms. First, when you hear thunder, head indoors immediately. It is the safest place to be. Second, avoid using electrical appliances and make sure you stay away from windows. If you are caught outside during a thunderstorm, find shelter in a car or a building. Remember that water conducts electricity, so steer clear of pools and bodies of water. Finally, stay safe and wait until 30 minutes after the last clap of thunder before resuming outdoor activities. Remember that your safety is in your hands. Stay smart and stay safe.
Thank you so much for playing that. So as you can see, Israel really did some good work when she was making these videos and these posts, and they were translated into multiple languages. You can see the Amharic right above, right under the English version. And we also try to add pictures so that if people in the community cannot read or write in their language or in English, they can sort of get an understanding of what's going on in the video. So when it comes to information dissemination, if we could go back to the first slide. Yep, that one. So when it comes to the information dissemination, dissemination included Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, as well as text messages, phone calls, and in-person outreach. A total of 68 posts were shared across ETSS social media platforms. The content reached 3,669 people, generated 1,186 impressions, and received 69 direct engagements. As you can see, Facebook had the widest reach, LinkedIn generated the most impressions, and Instagram had the highest engagement rates. Beyond the numbers, we built connection, trust, and accessibility across communities by relying on our diverse team and always being culturally and linguistically appropriate. So when it comes to the kits, we partnered with JPS Printing to make these kits. We made a total of 250 kits for all of the 5 communities, and we gave each community 50 kits to distribute to community members. So, and then for the collaborative platform, we, next slide, please. So we gathered 16 contacts, including Father or Kassis Dr. Yared. And if you want access to those contacts, or if you want to get in touch with somebody from the Ethiopian Eritrean community, please reach out to me. My contact is there. The way that we collected this list was I reached out to the community leaders. I asked them, hey, if an emergency were to occur in your community, and like, let's say a firefighter or somebody wanted to reach your community, who would be the best person to contact? Who would want to get involved? Who would want to like help, spread messaging or do what needed to be done? And he collected a total of 16 contacts, including himself. And if you ever, want to just reach somebody from the Ethiopian community or Eritrean community, please reach out to me and I'll get them in contact with you. So I will now just go over some policy implications and strategy recommendations for the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community. So the first policy implications is the implementing multilingual 911 services and ensure access to native language translators and during emergency support. So when we were doing the youth focus group, this was actually brought up. They said, hey, even if our people call 911, sometimes there's no access to an interpreter. So just making sure that those interpreters are available or can be easily reached. And then to develop and distribute emergency preparedness materials in local languages, not just only in Amharic. There's multiple languages from the presentation that we learned from the Ethiopian community. They mentioned that it's a very diverse population. So just making sure Amharic, Tigray, all of the other languages if possible. And then to engage trusted messengers, that includes community elders, leaders, and spiritual figures. That's what we did for this project. We partnered with Father Dr. Yared. He is a part of the church and people already know him. People already trust him. So it was much easier for us to get people to trust us because we were partnering with him. And then to use multi-platform communication strategies. This includes WhatsApp groups, social messaging platforms, Facebook, where the community is at is where you should also be. So I know a lot of our communities love to use WhatsApp. So I know even our community navigators have WhatsApp groups. So if you want to just get some messaging across, just looking at the platforms you already use and wondering, hey, how can I expand this? Even if it's just partnering with another organization and saying, hey, every week, can I send you some materials that you can share onto your WhatsApp groups? So, and then partner with religious institutions as trusted venues for emergency response coordination. So just earlier, we talked about going to the churches or where the communities are. So not only partnering with people from the community, but actually going to where they are. So they're at the churches, going to the churches to do all of these coordination and any emergency response or emergency information dissemination. Next slide, please. So another one is to host community meetings, workshops, and hands out on training sessions at familiar spaces. So this is just the same thing. So not just like dropping off the flyers, but actually saying, hey, can we use your space, your church, to host a training? Can we come in one Saturday or one Sunday while you have church services? And can we give a little speech or something like that? So that's just one opportunity that you can do. And then, you know, I'm so happy that we heard from the youth today on the presentation, but it just also involving more of the youth in emergency planning and leadership roles to bridge this generational gap. In the youth focus group, they mentioned that there's a generational gap. And if the youth are already aware of it, they know how to bridge the gap because, you know, they live in both worlds kind of thing. And then to strengthen awareness campaigns about existing emergency services through targeted and specific outreach. So again, this is just going to the community with all of the resources that you already have, making sure they're translated if they need to be, and making sure that it actually is about the community. So the visuals, make sure the nuance is from the community as well. So, and the easiest way to do this is to partner with somebody from the community. And then the last thing is to support and integrate traditional support systems rather than replacing them. So earlier, they talked about some successes of how the community came together and everything. So relying on those. So earlier, they talked about Mahbar. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but if I didn't, I apologize. But that's just where the community gets together to raise money for individuals. So finding how you can include some resources that the community already does into what you're doing, and instead of replacing them. The next slide, please. So now I just wanted to briefly go over some resources that we have here at ETSS. So ETSS, we have four areas. We have the adult services, the youth department, the resettlement, and grassroots initiatives. Please check out our website at etss.org, and you're able to see more information on each one of these. But the adult services just help adults find resources, whereas the youth department works specifically with youth after school programs, and then the resettles based off of what basically they tell us. And then the grassroots initiative is basically something new. It's to help empower new community-based organizations or already established community-based organizations to find how they can support their organizations and how they can help it grow. So that's just a few resources we have. And then here's some resources from 988. We actually reverse translated these. We partnered with 988. They were able to send us the translated materials, and we just verified them for accuracy. And if there was anything that needed to be edited, we edited them. And then I also wanted to include the ready.gov. We sourced most of our information from ready.gov for our social media posts. And anytime we wanted to share things, we even used ready.gov.